League Baseball. This information coming in. We are still waiting for a press conference from league officials, but so far, Laith Gafour joins me now in studio. He is the managing director of Lucentum Sports and Entertainment Law. What do you make of the suspensions? Let's talk about who's in the running here, or who's a part of this.
Well, Sarika, the names that have been released so far are the people that we expected. Of that long list, there are two that we want to pay close attention to. That's Johnny Peralta and Nelson Cruz. Those two players are important because they are on playoff-bound teams. And so by accepting the suspensions, they now will be missing the next 50 games, which in essence, if you're following baseball, that's a playoff run. So these teams are in good position, but certainly there's a lot of the season left, and there are teams on their heels looking to catch up to them. It's important to note that those players have made a decision that allows them to be prepared in the event that their teams make it to the playoffs to be available in October. The season will end just at the end of September, the 29th or 30th of September, and should their team still be in the running, they're available for playoffs.
So give me a bit more information about the suspension.
Well, so the suspensions are 50 games, and so there's no magic number about how they received it. Yes, under the JDA, 50 games is the first offense time that you receive, but there are 50 games left in the season. So when we heard about Ryan Braun, 65 games, and we're now hearing about these players, it corresponds to the days that are left in the season. What's also important to note is that both of those players, Mr. Cruz and Peralta, are free agents, which means that at the beginning of the 2014 seasons, they are unencumbered and they are prepared to and in a position to sign with other ball clubs. So those two things are really interesting things, and I would add, I think, undermine Major League Baseball's credibility in a principled approach to this biogenesis case, because they've now allowed players that admitted to cheating to still be able to benefit in the playoff runs and be available for full service next year.
So what do you think of that?
I think it rubs a lot of folks the wrong way, because if you're taking a principled approach, then it shouldn't matter, right? Why should we be concerned about these players being available for active service? Why should we be concerned about their ability to negotiate off-season and be ready for next year? If they cheated, and they should suffer stricter consequences outside of the fact of where they are in their respective collective agreements with their clubs.
Okay, we've got a commissioner statement coming in from the baseball commissioner. Alan Selig made this statement today saying Major League Baseball working diligently with the Players Association for more than a decade, not only with regard to random testing, groundbreaking blood testing for human growth hormone, and one of the most significant profiling programs in the world. They're clearly trying to say that, look, we are on board. We want to make sure none of the players are using this stuff. But how damaging is all this press right now to the image of baseball?
I think it doesn't help, but I think we need to take a step a little bit back. If we look at WADA, the World Anti-Doping Association, they started their first level of World Anti-Doping Association rules came into effect 2003. They were appealed and revised in 2009. A new version is coming out in 2015. It takes time. It takes time to change a culture. So I think Major League Baseball has made a mistake in the way that they've set a timeline that I don't think is realistic to change an entire culture of behavior among the owners, clubs, as well as the athletes.
You know, right through my email, literally seconds ago, we have just found out that A-Rod has been disciplined. He is suspended to 211 games. You'd probably get that on your BlackBerry right now as well.
Yes.
What do you make of that? Give us your reaction.
Well, let me take you through where things are going to go now. David Cornwell, who is Alex's lawyer, has said that they will do an immediate appeal. If that appeal is done, he will play tonight. The appeal must be heard 20 days after the filing. So that takes us towards the end of August. And
but wait, does he have to appeal today to play today?
Well, no, he doesn't. Automatically,
so he can play.
He can. All he needs to do is initiate or indicate to Major League Baseball that he wishes to appeal the decision. There's an automatic stay, which means that he's allowed to continue to play, which can be tonight in Chicago, and then that takes him to 20 days after Frederick Horowitz, who is the arbitrator assigned by Major League Baseball and MLBPA to hear this, will hear it towards the end of August. Now, he has 25 days after that to issue a decision. So that essentially means that takes him to the remainder of the regular season. So should the Yankees, who are still far way back in the wild card race, make it to the playoff, it becomes a relevant issue. If they don't make it to the playoff, then Horowitz is in a position to decide whether or not the suspension can be decreased, increased, and everything in between.
So you're saying 50 days. Within those 50 days, he's still allowed to play?
Yes, but the second window for the appeal, the arbitrator has up to 25 days. So, I mean, the arbitrator can come back in 10, But I would say, and by best estimates, he will be able to play for the remainder of this season. And what I think he hopes is that he comes back in, puts the New York Yankees on his shoulders, and they make a playoff run. And that shows his ability to still play and perform. And perhaps if Horowitz rules in his favor in the beginning of the season, we see if he has other options with other clubs.
This is really tight timing.
Very tight. And I think what the question it leaves people thinking about is, well, why would Major League Baseball be so interested in wrapping this all up?
Right.
So we have the other 12 players who we have no idea what happened. They've signed non-disclosure and confidentiality agreements. But under Section 6 of the JDA, it does allow limited provisions for the details of the arbitration that A-Rod will go through for that to be made public. There are some provisions that if the parties consent, that the details of what A-Rod will ultimately make in his pleadings can be available. And why that's important is it allows everyone to figure out what exactly Major League Baseball had on the other players, including A-Rod. One last point, they initially were charging 20 players. We've only come down to 12. So there's a lot of difference, and evidentiary issues will be what Frederick Horowitz will take a close look at.
The suspension, I'm just reading this email, says will become effective Thursday, August the 8th. Will cover 211 games. Were you surprised with this, or was that expected?
I wasn't surprised because we've always heard MLB talking about utilizing the commissioner's powers under Article 12. And in my perspective, in my research, and in my dealings, Article 12 which deals with the just cause provision, which allows the Major League Baseball commissioner to do what's in the best interest of baseball. The last time that was ever enacted was to deal with John Rocker, who said some inflammatory things about certain players. But before that, it was Pete Rose. So it's always been clear that Article 12 applied to gambling. It was never clear that it could ever apply to something like this. More importantly, they would have to have evidence, in my respectful view, that would have Alex Rodriguez at almost to the point of being in a conspiracy, a high-level operator, and he would also be subject to criminal charges. We've heard nothing of that. So I think that was always off the table. It was an empty threat. And the fact that we've now confirmed the suspension, I don't think it gave A-Rod any real opportunity to negotiate, because the reality is that lifetime ban, I don't think was ever really on the table.
How important is it for his image to be clear right now?
I don't think it matters. A-Rod falls, in my opinion, and a lot of folks who follow baseball, almost in the same category as Barry Bonds, right? There's the players, and then there are the sports writers who decide who goes into the Hall of Fame and who gets recognized in years to come. A-Rod is never in the category where he's favored. So from his perspective, I think we will have a day where he wants to have his version, and he wants to, go into the muck and mire of this entire situation. And in my view, baseball needs this because it allows fans to see a true vetting of what was involved and test the genuine credibility and interest in moving this game beyond this era of steroids. So I think for him, he's prepared. He has the money, and he's not a regular party. You have Major League Baseball, Major League Baseball Players Association, and the most powerful and influential player financially going against. So it's not a bench player. It's not a third stringer. It will be a huge fight between the three organizations.
Okay. Thanks so much for joining us.
My pleasure.